Okay, guys, how are you on a good mood? Because we're going to have to work tough on our topics. Kanner, you are the global organizer of this workshop. Can you just summarize the title and explain me what we're going to talk, what we're going to talk about this morning, please?
Sure, of course. I hope you can all hear me well. Today, this morning, we're going to talk about the implementation of augmented reality in the construction and design phases, and what will be the benefits as well, but also an open discussion about how we can actually provide this, total as an industry. And that's the reason there are multiple, let's say, panelists here on board from different areas. We have...
I will introduce if you wish, but we'll do it on a cool way. So how are you doing, Tom? You just joined. Please introduce yourself, please. Pick up a microphone, and introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Tom Gaspard. I'm working at National Railway Operator in Luxembourg. I'm part of the BIM team at CFL. And we are implementing the solution Gamma AR at CFL.
Okay, so let's discover the technology you're implementing. Anthony, how are you doing this morning?
Hi, I'm Anthony Carta. I'm expert in BIM management in France and Switzerland.
Thank you for this presentation. And last but not least, Daniel, how are you doing this morning? Please introduce yourself.
Interesting, you didn't pronounce my last name, right?
Oh yeah, Hurtubuise. No, okay. I can do it in French, or you want Hurtubuise or something like that, maybe?
Doesn't matter.
No, okay.
Good morning. I might know a few of you guys. I'm a BIM consultant. I do work with Tom. And for the record, if you guys don't know what CFL stands for, it's the Chemins Luxembourgeois. So he's from the richest country in Europe, just saying.
Thank you, guys. So can you just summarize the objective of this workshop? What we'll try to introduce? It's true that AR is definitely changing. It's a game changer in the BIM industry, even in the whole construction tech industry. What's the objective of this workshop?
So the main objective is for everybody to understand how AR at the end can be beneficial, and also at the same time how it can be implemented as well. So the idea is to give a broad perspective from different areas on AR technology, the requirements, and as well at the same time on how we at least so far achieved this.
Okay, so let's start by a practical example with Anthony. Anthony, obviously you have developed a practical project. You facilitate the access to BIM and support project owners and project managers towards the implementation of the BIM process in order for it to be done perfectly. Based on your experience, where do you think there are shortcomings in current BIM processes? It's a long question. Please answer it.
Yes. Well,
very long question, but very interesting anyway,
problem.
so go ahead.
There is the project, but I have again a newsletter, a French newsletter, where I'm saying what I need we're doing in the BIM industry. And I have writing a newsletter on Gamma AR and their tools. And in my opinion, we need to make the accent on the formation in the school for having experts later.
Okay, thank you very much. Something to add concerning this practical example, maybe with a practical return on experience, a practical business case? Yeah, no, not. Maybe even in French, yeah. Maybe if you want to answer. Does anyone do speak French too in that room? Est-ce que tout le monde parle français? Si peut-être vous avez quelques, peut-être si vous souhaitez éventuellement.
I'm sorry for my English.
Non, il est très bien, mais je pense que vous serez plus, plus à l'aise sur le français.
Si vous voulez en français, pour moi, au niveau des projets, l'implémentation du BIM, c'est vraiment au niveau de la MOBIM et du BIM management et au niveau des cas d'usage. On a MediaConstruct qui nous a pondu toute une liste de cas d'usage. So we have MediaConstruct make a list of use case, but we didn't do all use case. We make the accent on a use case for one moment on the project, on the conception, on the execution, on the exploitation, but we didn't use all use case.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's move up to Daniel. You have a broad experience with BIM projects with different international clients, obviously. So, what's for you the biggest difference between the best practice? What are the difference between BIM leaders and followers? And maybe I'll ask the last question later on, but let's start by those practical return on experience.
Practical experience, right. Obviously, in different parts of the world, we do build and have different processes, which makes BIM a pretty broad term. You mentioned use case. It's funny because some weird organization decided that's how we got to use BIM. Everybody else has their own list and specific use case. We had a discussion this morning at breakfast about BIM leaders and BIM followers, and then I believe the rest of the question you wanted to ask was about how do we get BIM integrated in any kind of firm, and then it comes through obviously leaders, and then Kenner, you asked an interesting question this morning based on it was you asked me about do we still need BIM leaders and what's their job now, and how does it, from what I've seen over the years, is you usually have this one guy in your firm that comes up and goes to their boss and say, hey, I've seen this or that. And at the beginning,
I want to be the evangelist.
Well, usually the fun thing is at the beginning they confuse a 3D model, Revit, and BIM. They're, oh, I've seen BIM, and then we should buy Revit.
It could be a gadget like another gadget like glass.
Well, exactly. Yeah. One thing that's very important is in any BIM process adoption is getting all the head honchos on board. You got to make sure that if it's a CEO, if it's a board, you got to make sure that everybody is on board to get started with. Because reality is you're going to need money. You're going to need money, you're going to need time. So if that BIM leader or that person can come up with ideas that will value this whole process and get everybody on board, and you got a good chance to achieve at least a little bit of everything that BIM can provide you.
Okay, something to add concerning that specific project? Maybe, Kenner.
Yeah, totally agree with that. There is an interesting perspective from, let's say, innovation perspectives, because you don't always have, let's say, also when BIM started to be implemented, always have the human resources ready for everybody. So there are some people who have the skills, some people don't. So you need to work on, as a company or as an organization, on a strategy on how to build up the teams that can then spread the words as well. And that's super important also for an augmented reality use case, but for BIM completely also.
Okay, maybe as a client you want to bring your own return experience on what's happened in Chemin de Fer du Luxembourg, for instance.
Yeah, so we tried a first implementation on a project where we are building a parking lot in the north of Luxembourg, and a big benefit which we saw is that you can pretty early see deviations from the actual project model, and you can better visualize the actual project for engineers, architects, which don't know the project actually. So it's very good to visualize the model in the early stadium on the construction side.
What is probably important in a BIM project, in a BIM organization, is to identify the true leaders in BIM and the true followers. Do you have the robots, the typical portrait of one leader in BIM company, in a BIM project, and the followers? Because we all know that if BIM is not in the heart of a project, it can really be quickly unuseful, So can you just help us to understand who's a true leader in BIM?
Who wants to give it a try?
Yeah, who wants, Anthony also wants to react. Okay, same questions for you, Daniel, and then Anthony, and every one of you guys. And if you have any question, please ask. Yeah.
This is like CSI, right? You gotta you gotta make a portrait of a leader.
On living people, not on dead one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a good question. I've seen so many different characters. One character that comes out that's very obvious is this leadership thing. Is people, when you got somebody in your firm that talks and people listen to, that's usually the right guy to start with. It doesn't need to be very, I'm going to say geeky. I mean, they can just understand the benefits. And then usually those people turns around to be leaders. You got to keep something in mind is if you want to implement BIM in your firm, it's a human resource changes. It has nothing to do with technology or using a software. This is, can I say bullshit? Am I allowed to say bullshit?
Yeah, you can do it,
Thanks.
yeah. In France.
I don't know. Usually at CFL I could call bullshit. Here I don't know. It's bullshit. I mean, it's all about human resources. It's all about getting people to acknowledge that it's something that's worth it, and then they'll pick up a tool. I mean, drawing a wall in 2D or drawing a wall in 3D, it's the same freaking wall. It's what goes in your mind and your head that's different. And then you start collaborating with people, and you're not discussing lines, but you're discussing objects and elements and a building and railways, and it's a very different process. So usually the firm that failed at moving to BIM is usually people that focus on tools. And it's funny when I say that because, you know, for the people that know me, they know I'm a tools addict. I love giving it, but it's a human being thing. I mean, you got to get people on board. So the real leader that you need to find is not obvious. It might not be the one that's actually tech savvy and that's crazy about those. It's somebody that sees the benefit. I spent 15 years at Renzo Piano, and then we had a partner, Bernard, which I loved to death. He's 60-some years old when he realized that this was the way to go. He could not use a software. He just realized that this was the way to build things. So it's leadership is about human resources and attitude way more than technical skills.
Yeah, human resource project before technology. Something to add?
I think it's important to identify who believe in BIM, first of all, and after to deliver the message in team, not myself. I didn't in the reason I didn't the person who say what we do to do. We are a team. We work on team. We work on BIM, and the BIM is the tool for arrive on the success on the project. But we need to identify the strong and the weakness before the project.
Yeah, it is. And before and during, yesterday we have an interesting conference concerning maintenance. I think for Canada it could be interesting because AR is so crucial in maintenance. And we have seen how BIM that was used for the construction of a building, when it's tried to be exploited for the exploitation of the building, can rapidly turn into a disaster if, for instance, a maintenance people come, change something in the building and doesn't put the new object in the BIM, you know what I mean? And all the project can be very quickly, for a simple traditional maintenance project, turn to be unuseful. So that's an example, and you're probably true, Daniel. People have to be to coordinate all the diverse district of the firm to do it. Now, so if you have something to add, I think this was a key success. But before talking again about those implementation, let's talk about what you're doing right now, because you have a long experience. You work for construction, you work for integration, and now you are a software designer and not designer, software. If I say something wrong, please correct me. I'm trying not to read the question, so I have to keep it in mind.
All good.
Okay, but the major tool, the major strength is now that you use AR within your process. So can you just explain how it's a key factor of success in the strategy in BIM and
So I think for like the question with the regarding the key success factors, I think what's really important is two things, and they were mentioned here too. For the BIM implementation, it was the same, but it's definitely true also for AR. You need to have the technology, that's one part, and that needs to be able to be implemented. And at the same time, you need to have the team on board. So without any team, nothing's going to happen. That's always the thing. And you need to have also, let's say, the mentality and the culture inside the company to push innovation. Because I'm seeing many companies all over the place, and there are companies that are really, really far advanced, And at the same time, there are companies that struggle because they have to still convince, let's say, their decision makers, their bosses, if they can implement something. And then it becomes like a long discussion about what are the benefits. And if people, that's always like the funny part if you talk about AR. If people try it out, it becomes obvious, like very, very obvious and very easy. And I think probably in this panel people have this experience. But the main, let's say, driver of that is, I think, culture in one part, especially if you talk about big companies, big corporates. You know, probably some of you work for big corporates. It takes a while until the information is like delivered. And on the other side, obviously technology has to be there. So what we do as a software provider, that's
software provider.
Yeah, that's like for me at least, like the case. We have here also like some of our team here, our CTO is here, for example, just there, who is more working on the software design there. But in our case, as a whole company, what we do is not necessarily to provide just software. It's not like that. It's at the moment we are driving actually a change in the industry, and that's the difference. Because if you think about what was possible 5 years before to what is possible now, there is a huge difference. And there's much more, let's say, that you can do with the BIM information that is now on site in terms of preventing of errors, in terms of communicating much more unambiguously, like clearly and certainly, than what you could do before.
Okay, now let's be really practical. Let's see, maybe we should start with Anthony. Anthony, you explained the shortcoming, Anthony, or who wants to answer, of course. You explained the shortcoming current BIM process. Now, for you, what are the technology you think are necessary to support BIM implementations, practically? What's the tool? The toolbox for
First
BIM
of all,
success.
when we speak of BIM, we speak of interoperability and of EFC. For me, we make really BIM when we begin on Archicad and we continue on Revit or Vectorworks, because today is not possible. We can begin on Archicad, but if the architect comment dit, quitte le projet.
Leave the abandon. Yeah, leave.
Yes, I'm
leave
sorry.
or-
If the architect leaves the project, we don't work on Archicad, we can't continue the work. So
You can move on and get the
yes,
project.
So if the new architect work on Revit, we did comment dire refaire tout le projet.
Reopen, rebuild.
We rebuild
Rebuild.
all the project.
Okay. Okay. Daniel is right. Okay. Okay. So first of all, you have to work open data.
We need a real interoperability on all software.
Okay. So this is the absolute number one tool you need to implement. Something to
When you open a document, a Word document, we can read it with open text, with doc, but in BIM it's not possible.
Okay, Kenner.
I just wanted to add something about this. Like, I think currently the software industry and all the data providers at the end, there is obviously different file formats. We all know that and so on. And definitely for us, it was actually like the first design decision on the software that we did was to support the open standards first, like IFC, BCF. But because of all the workflow needs, you also need to support, because companies have those needs, other like software providers like Autodesk, ACC or BIM 360, and have the workflows integrated. And this kind of stuff was always important for us because at the end, I think what's important to do is to have a tool or have a system where you have at least like the minimum amount of manual labor, and that's because everybody wants to like reduce that. That takes time and makes mistakes too. Yeah.
Okay, so on a practical way, is it all right? Only do we need a platform, something special, training program. Can you provide us the key success, the global key success for, do we list everything concerning the project?
So, like, if we talk about software, for example, in terms of augmented reality, there is not much that is needed. IFC is already out there, everybody can export it and so on. If you talk about Autodesk environments, everybody, like so many people use BIM 360, so many people use ACC. You can just integrate your data into, for example, our system. You can just import it, and that's perfectly fine. There's not much manual labor that you need to do. Just need to just connect it, and that's it. So key success factors is just to start from that perspective. But there is stuff that needs to be done beforehand. Maybe Daniel, you can just talk about that too, because I'm sure you have some information about this.
Yeah.
What do you want me to complete? Because I think there's pretty complete. Yeah, if you want to get started with AR, it's really simple. I'll take a minute to explain.
Okay, so let's talk about
Years
the
ago-
diverse steps to
Well, years
successful.
ago, if you guys are aware, we built a school called the ENS in Saclay, and then we did a 6-month project. So that was years ago. I mean, we had iPhones, but they were not what they are today. And so we did augmented reality using a different software, but also using it on the HoloLens. The initial cost was crazy expensive. I mean, HoloLens is very expensive. Software was expensive. And you couldn't really train somebody to build the model and have it, transfer it to your HoloLens. So we had to do it. So it was meetings on Thursday. And then the site construction team would say, well, we want to see this area, this area. We'd get the models on Friday. We'd load everything for Monday morning. We'd go on site with them on Monday morning, help them to put the hard hat in the HoloLens and adjust the HoloLens and go on site. And then, so it was. I'm not gonna say painful. I mean, we had a blast. It was a lot of fun because I mean, you got to go back at least maybe 7 or 8 years. The difference here, and I mean, let's be honest, it's a Gamma AR, so we're going to talk about your product, obviously. The great thing, I mean, it's this. I mean, who doesn't have a phone here? Raise your hand, the lousy person who doesn't have a phone. See? Everybody has a phone. Who doesn't have a 3D model? Who doesn't have Gamma? Okay, well,
Okay, it
there
was
you
a
go,
chance
you
to
lazy
see
ass.
people
Now it's time to go and
sleeping while
download
you-
it.
Okay.
But that's all you need. You got a model, you got a phone, you can use AR. It's that simple. So you guys, and this is one of the very first thing I told you. Well,
Yeah, but does AR implementation needs additional skills, really?
no, I just
No.
told you you need a model, you need a phone,
Okay.
and you need a good tech, and that's what you guys are providing.
Okay. If I
You
don't
okay?
die, no, not yet, but pretty soon.
Can we bring this guy some water, please?
Okay, so maybe
Or-
you
or
go on
whiskey?
with the moderation.
And I'll have one, too.
Hopefully, yes, that would be great, but maybe later on. Yeah. So, what augmented reality brings the clients who are ready to deploy it, really, in practical
Well,
way?
Tom, I think Tom, you can answer that. You mentioned it earlier.
Tom,
CFL used it on a
Yeah.
project, and they're still
before
using it.
AR, after AR, what was the major difference, Tom?
So what is a main benefit is to see actually the model on the construction site. If you see the construction plans, they are not always like explaining or understanding easy to be understandable. So a model is always more explainable if you see it in real life on the project. So I think this is a key benefit, the visualization of the actual model.
And there he goes. He goes, please. Well, I got in touch with Gamma through CFL because you guys were starting to use it. But I'm just going to summarize it. Like I said, you need a model, you need a phone. It's that simple. So there's really no reason not to use it. You guys did something funny. Oh, so I got some friends from Patriage here. You guys, I don't know if you're aware, but they're working on the Notre Dame project. And maybe some of you are not aware, but with a bunch of friends around the world, we also built a model. And then we gave it to those guys. And you guys were in Paris. It was you, JN, right? You were in Paris a couple weeks ago. And they made a LinkedIn post about it. You literally superimposed the Revit model literally on site and walked around Notre Dame. And then all they had was, well, you had a tablet. but that's all you really need. So it's very different from what we had to do before. All you need, like I said, is a phone, a 3D model. That's very simple.
Yeah, it's really mind-blowing, guys. What brings the future now? Now let's talk about the future. And guys, what are the use cases you currently envisage for augmented realities for your over customers? And what is your expectation for the next years? Who wants to?
So
Kenner, go ahead.
Can you repeat the question again? Because I
Oh
didn't
yes,
understand correctly,
okay.
sorry.
So what are the use cases you currently envisage for augmented realities for your other customers? And what is your expectation for the next years?
Okay. I think if we talk about the use cases, it will develop into multiple areas. But if we start today, as Tom said correctly, many people use it currently to visualize their models on site to do a few things. One, to understand what they have to build. So augmented reality at the end, what is it? It is a method to give you certainty about your project. Instead of unclear documents and unclear plans, you have like pretty clear what you have to build. And this at the end helps you to prevent errors too, because before you build something, you just avoid the mistake before it's getting done. That's one part. On the other side, and that's like something that is already existing and obviously used too, you can use augmented reality for issue management as well, because, and here's a big difference to what exists currently out there, like with all tools. They all provide, let's say, just 2D data, like in terms of sketches or text or some forms. It's like the old methods. And you don't get a clear understanding of where everything is happening. It doesn't create this transparency. Augmented reality at the end is so easy that it allows you to, at the end, do the issue management based on the models and do the progress management based on the models too. So you can just tag information on the objects themselves, which gives you more clarity. So that's at the end what is currently the case. If you talk about the future, there's going to be much more coming to that. Like in terms of how can you systematize and automatize tasks based on what has been, let's say, collected in terms of data on the BIM models, meaning what's going to be the next step, for example. What needs to be built next? What can we, in terms of, let's say, ordering new materials, do? Because we finished like all, let's say, slabs in the first floor. This kind of things are going to be the next steps in terms of the development and automation, because it's not going to be always like in terms of AR, but it's going to be for sure in terms of based on the data that comes from AR. And there is a whole world that's
a huge challenge, interesting challenge. Same question for you, Anthony and Daniel. Future development for your customers, new territory for AR and BIM industry.
Today, AR is only for realization, for execution, but I think we can develop that for conception. When we are in gym on working, I think we can develop a use case for project the model, the reality model, and navigate on the model, like on the movie.
Yeah, that's the one we saw a long time ago with Tom Cruise, for instance. He was designing things in augmented reality. Same question for you, Daniel, concerning future development.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I've been bugging you with this miniature features. We've seen AR used in construction site, plenty, some fail, some work. But when we started working together, I started looking into using it through the design phase. And who here has a model shop in their office? Just a handful, right? Hi. So we started thinking about so they have something called the miniature mode, which is basically loads your model at a specific scale. So we started using it with a client of mine and see what benefit this could actually bring during design phase, because building a model, it's expensive. If you don't have it in a house, it's expensive. It's time consuming because you got to send drawings and you got to wait till they come back, and then if there's a change, well, do it all over again. So we started using it simply on a phone and the surface of your desk and load your model into a 1/500 scale and just have a look and use it as a different tool. It's not replacing the physical model, but it's just one more tool that so far we've been pretty successful just using it as a quick replacement for a virtual, I think we can call that a virtual model.
Okay, additional question for you, Daniel. Which shortcoming needs to be overcome to make AR adoption a mass phenomenon?
Oh, good question. Shortcomings. Are they, well, they're always going to be human. I mean, I keep insisting on that, but they're always going to be human. You need somebody on site that is willing to give it a shot. I mean, we were on you remember the last visit we did in Trois Vierges? We had a project manager there who was actually really willing to use it. He was willing to spend the time to learn how to use the software, and that's always going to be the main component of any kind of implementation. It's not related to BIM. You want to change your accounting software, where obviously your accountant has to be happy about it, so this is not going to change. Do we have any, I mean, of course we have tons of technical, I'm going to call them challenges, like keep calling you guys with new requests every week. But this is progressing. I think the biggest challenge will always be human beings.
Okay, we're short on time, short to the conclusion. Before asking you one last question and maybe conclusion table, maybe guys, do you have any questions, comments, or contribution for our super experts in AR revolution? Thank you. Please introduce yourself.
Hey, my name is Anton Kaplun. I'm civil engineer, and I was interested in this AR solution. And my question is to Tom. You mentioned that you covering like your QA/QC workflow by AR processes. So, in your opinion, what other workflow, like daily routine, can be covered by AR technologies? Thank you.
You mean the workflow between the office and the construction site? So I guess you need pretty early to prepare your models before you go to construction site. You need to know what you want to see. So you need to first think about the office and then implement on the construction site. That's for me the actual workflow. You don't go on the construction site and start looking what you want to see. That should be done already in the office.
Thank you. Something to add as an answer to these questions? Okay, so we're close to the conclusion, guys. Maybe one last question for you, Kenner, concerning Gamma AR. If I don't lose the questions, that's going to be better. Okay, so is there something Gamma AR can already handle, and if not, when is it going to be the case?
So we can't handle. Okay,
yeah.
Got it. So no worries, it's all good. It really depends. If models are very, very, very big, sometimes it's an issue, but we also optimize like on that. And it depends always. Like there's always like a push to have like bigger projects running on like phones, and we allow for like huge projects already to work on that. But sometimes even like the limits are an issue. But currently, I would say 99% of the projects is fine. It's just like some projects where you need to maybe make some adjustments there too.
All right. Okay, guys, it's time for conclusion. We still have about 5 to 6 minutes, so it's 1.5 minutes for each of you. Do you have one important key point you would like to add to this panel? Topics you would have enjoyed to
give it a try.
Huh?
Give it a try. Who hasn't tried AR yet?
Okay, so
give it a try. That's the key word. Give it a try.
Okay, but it's short, so we still have 5 minutes, so it's a very short. Okay, it's for other people. Okay, Tom, so your conclusion for this debate?
For me, it's important that the communication has to be bidirectional between the construction site and the office. So when people are on the construction site, they need to communicate the issues they detect on the construction site back to the office to take the decisions there. So the communication is an important point for me.
Okay, never forget communication and use AR to make it easy. That should be your conclusion. Thank you so much. What's your conclusion, Anthony?
I think for success on BIM, you need to use all the tools who is made for you. So go.
go and use all the tools. Of course, Gamma, AR inside, I guess. Kanner, what's your conclusion?
I think my conclusion is build processes that are that help you to at the end save money and at the same time, but more importantly, think of the future and not just like today's like troubles, because you need to, we all, actually all the people here in this BIM area, we all are innovators and we need to now push the topics and go with what we had and what was in the past to what we can do currently. And there is so much more that can be achieved in terms of bringing BIM to the field, because that's something that is still completely open.
Okay, and so for you, Daniel, you just already say something short, but the conclusion of all the conclusion?
I have to do a conclusion of the
Yeah,
conclusion.
of all the conclusion, wow. Yes, yes.
Where's the bar?
Well, the bar, okay, lots of sites, okay. So it's a good conclusion because, guys, you don't. I think you obviously don't have a booth today, but if you want to exchange around game at AR, all the expertise we talked about this
Why don't
morning.
you stand up, guys, so you can see who the Gamma AR teams are.
Yeah,
Jay
the
and,
game are.
there we go. If you
join
run
on
into those
stage,
guys,
come on,
they're
guys.
over there.
So you
They
got
speak French, by the
super
way, except for this guy.
Experts.
Except for the boss, everybody speaks French.
Yeah, obviously some of you do speak French too, guys. So please join the team, exchange your business card, and make good expertise and return on experience all the day. Thank you very much. I think we can give a very warm welcome to our experts. Thank you so much.